So, any number of times I have said that people's obsession with good personing is going to unalive us all. And here's the video where I really talk about why, where I address the assumption that being a good person is something that everybody cares about. Because I really do think that y'all think if that matters to everybody. And I'm going to talk about it from the standpoint of being black. Just to be clear, the only group just about that is obsessed with being a good person as some kind of ultimate achievement, that's just you. That's just you. Other groups and other societies have other things that they use to prioritize the quality of someone's character or behavior rather than just good, because it actually describes the thing. So, one thing that you never hear black people doing is talking about being a good person. I mean, we'll say that someone isn't a terrible person. We'll say that we'll say that we'll talk about whether or not someone is growing. We'll talk healed and unhealed. We'll talk about much more often what we're describing is character in terms of behavior, rather than character in terms of this is who you are as a person. Although, there are times when we do, but as far as like your ultimate achievement, about it's not like it's not a once saved always saved situation. But here's some of the things that we might say. We might say someone is lost in the sauce. These are very old phrases, by the way. I'm not giving away anything new. Bamboozled, fast, which I think needs to go into a dumpster. So we can, or woke, whether or not we're woke, whether we're staying ready, etc. These are things that black people will say to each other or describe each other as. And it has absolutely nothing to do with being a good person. Nothing at all. We have names in our culture, we names for people, types of people, or how people show up. Miss Ann is the new Becky is the new Miss Ann. Then there's Darth Becky, which my friend came up with, and I I really love. Um, we have Karens. We have I'm sorry, Miss Ann. Karen is a replacement for Miss Ann. We have Becky. We have names that we use for each other that I'm not going to go into in this video. Now, what is the closest thing to an equivalency between being a good person that has that kind of value in the black community? It's authenticity and dealing with reality. What people often call radical honesty, we just call not being shady. So you can see why, when you're trying to communicate with us and get us to believe that and trust you and give you the benefit of the doubt and all of that stuff of being a good person, we don't even do that with each other. We don't do that with ourselves. I have never in my life said that I had a pure heart. Never even thought it. But any number of women have said to me, have justified their behavior when I call them on their shady behavior, have talked about the purity of their hearts. Good grief. Or having hate in their hearts. I mean, come on, people, grow up. This is grown up type conversation, which is way less simplistic. And this is what comes of being part of a culture where things like where the important topics are off the table as rude. Money, religion, politics. Can't talk about any of those things. Right? We value being real. We value honesty. Even if it's hurtful. We will tell each other that we don't like each other. To each other's faces. And it's not the end of the world, especially with black women. When we say it to each other, it's a way of saying, hey, there is no need for us to invest a lot of time and energy in trying to establish a certain kind of relationship because you and I are just not going to be friends. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that we don't share the same spaces. It doesn't mean that we don't have the same social groups. It just means that we're not going when we're in those spaces together, we can be polite and not put energy into trying to make this like fetch happen, because it's just not going to. And we're both okay with that. And sometimes that changes, which is kind of cool. But I always say, like, women would rather burn each other's houses down than admit that they don't like each other. That's how bad it is. And this is why there's this gap. There's a huge understanding gap between you and us, because you're not really willing to talk about the realities of your very human behavior, to the point that you believe that everybody thinks the way that you think and should think the way that you think about human behavior. Like this stuff with the after the post-election FAFO, it's fun to watch, but it's not real, because it's not like half of you didn't know what the other half were like before the election. You knew what kind of person people you were dealing with, but you were given the benefit of the doubt, which is basically a get out of jail. It's a cop out for both you and for them. It's a cop out, so you don't have to look at the reality of who this person is and deal with them accordingly. And it's a cop out for them because they get to keep their good person stamp unless they like rob a bank. And even then, maybe they were just hungry. And so now that y'all are mad at each other, and you have like 70 million people backing you up, you can be all, I'm not talking to you anymore and I don't like you anymore. I don't care about any of that, because it's not real. Because you knew who that person was before this. And many of you who are cutting off ties with family members who voted in a way that you don't like, you're doing so not because of the politics, but because of the family relationship. And you're pretending like you're taking a principled stand, as opposed to finally taking a stand for yourself, which is something that you have every right to do.